Woo-hoo! You caught me. I'm in the islands. I'm sweating like crazy. I'm here in the elements because I want to understand what I am painting. I'm completely lost. I'm starting to get kind of thirsty. Man, I hope I make it out of here, right? When you get lost in a painting, that's a time for you to really know who you are. The way that you handle crisis, the way that you handle adversity, struggle, the difficulty, that is something you will learn, as I have learned, to embrace in the process of painting, because you know it's formative. It's going to give you something that's real, right here, and right here, and probably like right here. It's going to give you something that's real, that's formative, your technique, what you come away with in all that, it's going to be true, and it will be you. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about my experience that helped me to see in a completely different way, that has revolutionized the way that I paint. Not just the way it looks, the way I think about painting, the way I think about looking, and just things in general. Some of you may know that I got my MFA in painting from the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, and it was a good experience. I'm glad I did it. I learned a lot while I was there. What I learned after I graduated, a couple years out, is really what I want to share with you. It's the most valuable. But I wouldn't have been able to receive that had I not first gone through my training at PAFA and making all those incredible mistakes that I made, which only helped me to grow and to learn. By the way, look, you have to make mistakes as a painter. You have to. You know, whether you're a novice just getting into it, a hobbyist, or whether you're someone who's really serious about it. I mean, mistakes are our friends. We need to love our mistakes, as long as we're not being careless. But if we're really putting forth a solid effort and we totally mess things up, that's our opportunity to learn and to grow. And that is going to be one of our greatest teachers. There was a time when I really thought I could paint. I was totally naive and foolish, but I was arrogant and I thought it. And I don't mind admitting that to you right now because it's the truth and I want to be transparent, so that's the truth. Anyway, I say that because there's a purpose in that. When I thought I could paint, I was so polarized in my way of thinking that I wasn't able to receive ideas that really would have transformed me way earlier. I just wasn't ready to receive them. We are going to analyze a painting today. We're going to analyze it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what it's doing, because paintings function, they behave, they perform, okay? And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the significance of that performance and how every move that the painter makes in the painting is done for the performance. I used to teach at the University of South Carolina in the art department for a number of years. And while I was there, I was introduced to a painter whose name is Stanley Lewis, whose ideas about painting, about reading paintings, and about just looking in general have been life-changing for me. I want to share some of that with you right now.
Vermeer is one of my favorite painters. I learned so much from him. Every time I look at one of his paintings, I see something new. What I am going to show you is a result of my own findings and my own research and looking at paintings and learning how to read them. So we'll start here, where what you see is an arrangement that is pretty straightforward. You have foreground, middle ground, background, and a very compressed spatial construct. It's quite beautiful and elegant. Let's see what Vermeer does with this. He uses what are called transparent planes to reorganize the space. The plane on the left is a transparent plane that functions as a solid. It's transparent, we can see through it, but it's solid and it's salient, which the implication is that it's moving toward us. It's actually moving toward us. It's approaching the viewer. Whereas the plane on the right, which is set just behind the figure in the doorway, that is actually receding from us. We can take into account the rule of diminution and perspective, where when something is set lower on the ground plane, we read that as being closer, and when something is positioned higher on the ground plane, we read that as being further away. So look at what he does here. Look at the bottom of each opening. You see what I'm talking about? That helps to create the sensation of the plane on the left to advance and the plane on the right to recede. Now consider everything that is connected to the opening on the left. The building, the ground, the window shutters. That all begins to advance with it, like silly putty, being stretched, pulled toward us. Whereas the opening on the right is doing the opposite. As it recedes, it pulls and takes everything with it. Vermeer further demonstrates this through primary visual movements, where we see on the right there is an initial thrust that elevates that plane on the right, which connects to the movement of the building, which moves the eye, directs the eye of the viewer upward to the window at the top of the building. The plane to the left, when we are in the sky, we are brought around the cloud, under it, and then straight down to the alleyway, to the plane that depicts the alleyway. So we have an upward movement, a thrust to the right, and a downward movement, a descent. It's almost like a release of pressure to the left. Vermeer then uses secondary visual movements to support the initial primary movements for these planes. Remember, a master composer takes into account every single element, every single function. There is nothing wasted. Everything is considered. And again, he's using smaller visual movements that reinforce the secondary and primary. In other words, these smaller movements help to contain the eye of the viewer within not just the painting, but within the primary and secondary visual movements. This culmination of movement is a type of form in of itself, which influences the direction of the gaze of the viewer. And as a final note, look again at where Vermeer places his strong horizontal barriers. On the plane on the right, it's set below the figure, thereby separating that plane from the ground plane and opening the top of that plane up into the upward thrust of the building, you see, which takes us to the window, which takes us to the sky, which brings us around the cloud and down to where the plane on the left is. The plane on the left then separates from the building and connects to the ground plane, thereby anchoring it and bringing it even closer to us. You see, this is the difference between the way something looks and what something is doing. The former relies on what is taken for granted in sight, whereas the latter relies on the cultivation of one's sensibilities through that sense of sight. It's when you look at a painting and something strikes you in a profound way, but you can't quite figure out what it is. That's when you know the painting is appealing to you through your sensibilities. And that can be identified, but it takes a concerted amount of time, patience, and participation.
When I discovered this different way of seeing, I had to completely change the way that I painted. Because what I was now experiencing was something that was so much fuller and demanded more than what I was able to provide through the way that I was painting up to that point. My vocabulary was severely limited compared to my newfound experiences. It was overwhelming, and it still is overwhelming because my vocabulary is still limited and I'm still not able to paint the way that I really want to paint. But I'm working at it, just like you. And just let yourself be in the process and love it. Love it. Ah, so many bugs out here. Here's a question from grad school I posed to you. Leave a comment below with your answer. Would you paint if there was nobody there to see your painting? If you were the only person alive, would you still paint? You let me know. But be honest about it. Don't be like overly romantic or whatever. Just be honest. I don't like bugs. They kind of creep me out. Yeah, leave a comment, let me know if you feel the same way. When you're painting outdoors, what bugs, right? Gah! Bugs.